Welcome to Classical Theology. In this episode, we are going to answer answers in Genesis on the topic of UFOs. While I was scanning YouTube the other night, imagine that, I came across an interesting video put out by Dr. Danny Faulkner of Answers in Genesis. It was streamed April 28th, 2020. And he said a few things that were interesting to me about UFOs, and I thought I would address those in this talk. Let's listen to what he has to say.
There's some people who argue that this whole question of UFOs and aliens and so forth is a spiritual battle. They would oftentimes point out that according to 2 Corinthians 11:14, Satan sometimes appears as an angel of light. They say, aha, flying saucers, or UFOs, I should say, are usually manifested as bright lights up in the sky. So quite literally, these might be satanic or demonic manifestations taking place, demonic activity acting right there. And oftentimes these are tied in with certain views of eschatology, and many times an occult connection is tied to here. Now, I think that this kind of slides into the fantastic. People like to hear fantastic things, even if they may or may not be true. I've never been a big fan of this particular spin on this. Again, most UFO sightings can be explained in terms of misidentifications or hoaxes. The few 1 or 2% that can't mean that they have to be something else. I've just, in my investigation that's going back decades, I've never seen compelling evidence that said, yeah, these must be something that needs some other sort of explanation other than misidentifications, hoaxes.
So that got my attention because I am interested in ufology. If you see my channel, you probably know that I have an interest in this, and I have been arguing for the spiritual view and that there is some kind of real phenomena. So what interested me here with Dr. Faulkner's talk was he made two claims here. One is that he is not convinced that whatever is going on is spiritual or demonic at heart. He does go on to say after that that there is a spiritual element to this, that people can have their eyes taken off of Christ because of this, and people can be duped in various ways. But he seems to reject the demonic view that would explain what this UFO kind of alien phenomena is. And the second point that actually got me more interested, or had more of a reaction, I guess, was the claim that he doesn't think or hasn't seen in his decades of research that there has to be any explanation for UFOs, or I guess anything in ufology that doesn't explain, that doesn't require an explanation that's either naturalistic or from a hoax. Now, I've been doing my own ufology investigations or research for several years now. I did my research project for the Air Force on a master's program I did with them on the topic of UFOs, national security. Now, the interesting aspect of the timing of this talk was that this talk was given in April of 2020, and we started seeing all sorts of things start to come out with the government really around November of 2020. In fact, just a little over a year later, in June of 2021, there was a memo, a report rather, from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence given to Congress. And the report said that there were 144 reports of UFOs. They could identify one, which was a deflating weather balloon. And that had come out really in the middle of all these Navy videos that were leaked. There was a story in the New York Times in 2017, and that was leaked out. The videos were leaked out, and the Pentagon eventually came out saying, yeah, these are real videos. So there's been a lot of UFO hype lately. And this discussion, this video by Dr. Faulkner was given right up front before all this stuff kind of, these things came out in 2017, but we started seeing these more, I don't want to say disclosures. I don't want to say disclosure, but there was all these things coming out with the government about the DNI report. There were different task forces being made. In 2022, in July, we had the first open congressional hearing about UFOs since Project Blue Book back in the 60s. And so there's a lot of things coming out in this time after Dr. Faulkner's talk. Even before that, we were aware of a lot of these videos and sightings from the Navy. So 2 points I want to respond to these 2 points here he brought up. One, and I want to do this in reverse order. One is that are there can these UFO sightings that have been going on for hundreds of years, thousands of years, can all of them be explained naturally or through hoaxes? I didn't really think much about UFOs until a few years ago. I was interested in them. Like anybody else, it was interesting. I have an interest in backyard astronomy, but when I started looking into the topic of UFOs, aliens, all this, what really fascinated me was the parallel between what non-Christian researchers like Jacques Vallée, John Keel, J. Allen Hynek would say about UFOs and what Christians say. One is that there really is something going on that does not seem to be explained. Back in the Blue Book days in the 50s and 60s of the Air Force, there was about 22% roughly of the cases that were not explainable. Even the report that was given that shut down Project Blue Book, the Condon report, or the Condon committee that gave the report. The summary at the beginning made by Edward Condon says there's nothing to this, it's all explained naturally. But his own report, which is several hundred pages long, there were several people who gave information and contributed to it. There was still about 20 something percent of the cases that were not explained. So why would we think that natural explanations and hoaxes cannot explain all of the data? Well, if we look at the data, we see that it goes back, as I said, hundreds of years, maybe as far back as ancient history goes, depending on how you want to read this. There have been reports. Jacques Vallée and Chris Aubeck in their book "Wonders in the Sky" and many other books by Vallée in particular have demonstrated that people, even in ancient times, have seen what they would describe as UFOs. And so this isn't just local to the United States, and it's not a recent phenomena either. While the modern U.S. UFO craze really started in 1947, we see the airships in the 1890s. We see other claims of UFOs going back even hundreds of years before that into the 1500s. And so it's not new. And this phenomena is worldwide with all cultures all over the world. And according to Jacques Vallée, who has been researching this alongside J. Allen Hynek since at least the 60s, he's a interesting person to do this research because one, he's an astronomer, and two, he has degrees in computer science. So he has really good training in how to collate the data. And so what he tells us is that, and I'm not going to rehearse all of his arguments here. There are in other videos I've made and his own writings. But basically, if we look at the data and we consider that probably fewer than 10%, less than 10% is reported, once we start looking at this and calculating it and taking everything into consideration, there are at least hundreds of thousands of reports around the world about some kind of UFO, or now we're calling it UAP activity. And if you really wanted to look at the numbers, apart from, well, just these few people are making the sightings or reports, whatever, and take everything into detail, Vallée thinks that this is probably happening in the millions. In fact, in 2009, there was a survey that says from ABC News, or it was reported on ABC News, that 40 million Americans said that either they or people that they know have seen UFOs. And that's just in the United States. And that's back in 2009. In fact, I know several people who have seen UFOs. I've had several people contact me through my channel saying they've had experiences with either UFOs or what they would consider alien, quote unquote, alien encounters or spiritual kind of encounters. So is it really the case that these all can be explained naturally? Well, if you read books that Jacques Vallée has written, and a good place to start is his trilogy, Dimensions, Confrontations, and Revelations. They're three separate books: Dimensions, Confrontations, and Revelations. He just details, I think just in Confrontations alone, if that's the right one, he details hundreds of cases where people have these fantastic experiences of seeing flying saucers or UFOs, whatever you want to call them, in various shapes and things like that, different colors and all sorts of things like that. And they also have experiences of beings. It's not just lights in the sky or far off. These things are really close. A lot of times they're good at close encounters. And so we have to, first of all, not just paint this with a broad brush in such a way that we say all these things can be accounted for naturalistically or by a hoax. There seems to be too many occurrences around the world and throughout time to say that every single one can be explained naturally because of the type of phenomena they are and the things they do. And then I think in conjunction with what we're going to see in a minute, the demonic connection. So, first of all, why do they not seem to be explained naturalistically? Well, one is just the sheer number of cases. We're not talking about a very few number of people saying, "Oh, I saw something in the sky that was light and I can't explain it." That would not be very convincing. But when you have hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of people saying they saw things that were not normal or mundane, but they saw what they would describe as a classic disc or flying saucer, or they saw something that was doing something that really cannot be explained naturalistically, like the Navy videos, for example. Well, there just have been innumerable cases where we have eyewitnesses saying, "I saw this thing going, and we were even tracked this thing on radar going hundreds or thousands of miles an hour, and it performing a 90-degree or 180-degree turn." That shouldn't be possible. Either the thing would fall apart or it would kill people inside of it if there were people inside of it. That's not an unusual occurrence with such kinds of UAP or UFOs. They routinely do things like dart around at unbelievable high rates of speed that really cannot be explained through how we now understand physics. So that really has made people like, for example, John Keel and J. Allen Hynek argue that these things probably really aren't even really material or physical in the way that we consider them. Now, Vallée thinks they're physical. He thinks that they have found some way to go between various dimensions of space and time. Although he does also say that there is a psychic element to this, not a psychic element. I'm going to go to the mind reader, but that there's some kind of an energy, and that these beings, whatever they are, can make us see things on the TV screens of our brain that they want us to see. They're also a transmedium in the sense that they can go through space, they can go through the air, they can go through water as if there's nothing even there. And this should also be done from our understanding of physics. Even just recently, there was a video that came out several years ago. Well, it came out recently. It was made several years ago, where we have this spherical-looking object that was hovering in the sky and just went into the ocean. The Navy videos that we hear about from, say, the Tic Tac and all that, they saw something in the water that just came flying out, and 1 second it was over there, and then the next second it was miles over here. And that just really cannot be explained naturally in the sense that we understand physics now, and no one could really hoax that either. Plus, these things are happening all over the world. We shouldn't believe that people are out hoaxing in the middle of the woods or out in very rural areas where there really aren't very many people. A lot of this happens out in the middle of nowhere. Got people who are hunters, people who are out doing things, and they see these objects or have these experiences in the middle of the night. People aren't just lurking around trying to hoax people. And the kind of things being done aren't really things that can be hoaxed. And it's easy to use trick photography. I have an app on my phone. I play with my friends with this. I'll have I'll have a video of something I'm making. I can put a little flying saucer in there, and make it fly around, or I can put little birthers that are the different kinds of lights that are called birthers, and or a vortex and things. Just have some fun with that. But that's me being able to play and manipulate with a picture or a video. We're not talking about pictures or videos here. We're talking about people, hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people who have seen things with their own eyes that cannot be explained. They have been said to disappear into nothingness. Have been said to appear from nothingness. That's not something that, again, we understand in our current state of physics that should be able to happen. So that wouldn't be able to be hoaxed. And it's not even really, from what we're being told from researchers and physicists and ufologists, that shouldn't be able to happen physically or naturally. That's why people like Hynek have gone and say this is probably not a typical garden variety material physical object. Also, these things have gone back decades ago, even just for our own U.S. phrase of ufology. Whatever they have had technology that far outpaces the current technology of the day. So I took a class in the program where I did this UFO research project. One of the class was basically the history of air power, and air power does not go back very far. We're in 2023 as of right now. It's a little over a century old with the Wright brothers, and then we have some planes coming in um, with the World Wars, and then past that. But we're not talking about planes with propellers. We're talking about things that are flying at a very high rate of speed that are performing unbelievable maneuvers that should not be possible. This isn't something that the U.S. really seemed to have. While there was worry of other countries like the USSR at the time taking technology from the Nazis, that was relatively quickly dispelled as well. In fact, the technology was so beyond what we had at the time that generals in the U.S. Air Force in the late 40s were saying, and this is now known to be official documentation, certain generals were saying these are interplanetary spacecraft. These people who were in the intelligence community, generals were saying this isn't something that we have. This must be interplanetary spacecraft. What about the apparent psychic nature of the phenomena? There's there's lots of aspects that simply can't even be explained materially, let alone with something that's somewhat prosaic of just having advanced technology or even aliens, as Jacques Vallée has said, and especially in his trilogy in Confrontations and Revelations. The alien hypothesis really, as he says, isn't weird enough or strange enough to account for the data. John Keel says something very similar. Hynek says the same kind of thing. It's just interesting that so many high level, not all of them, but very high level people in UFO research throughout the past decades and even today don't think that they're alien. They don't think that they're from another planet. But they have psychic type phenomena in the sense that they have energy, or they do things that again can't be explained through normal um, physical nuts and bolts ways. What about the demonic view? So Dr. Faulkner says he is not very impressed with the demonic view. Um, one reason that I tend to think that there's a demonic connection with this, and I used to wonder why would demons care if we believed in aliens or not? Why would it matter to a demon if we believed in aliens or not? And so again, what I started seeing with the research into this discussion, even by non-Christians, especially Vallée, Keel, even Hynek, they all say something. And a friend of mine has pointed this out to me recently, and he said the people who are researching this, and they typically don't come across most of the time as saying this is really a good thing, positive. Now, there are people, especially in the New Age movement, who are saying they're being enlightened by this kind of stuff. Stephen Greer, different people. Even if you look at people like Whitley Strieber with his blockbuster book, Communion. On the one hand, he says this is something very, very unique. It's very special. But on the other hand, he says I don't know what these things are, and they very well could be deceiving me. Well, something that Vallée, Hynek, Keel say across the board is that these beings are deceitful. In fact, Keel says that these things are very similar to what we see in spiritual type contexts. In fact, I got a new toy recently. the book that goes back to the earliest days of the Air Force investigation. This is basically a facsimile or a copy of it. It's called UFOs and Related Subjects and Annotated Bibliography. And one of the people in here who put this together, put this bibliography together, Lynn Coteau, says this, and this is cited by many people, Keel included. She says a large part of the available UFO literature is closely linked with mysticism and the metaphysical. It deals with subjects like mental telepathy, automatic writing, and invisible entities, as well as phenomena like poltergeist manifestations and possession. So, again, it's interesting that we're seeing research by people who are saying the same things that traditional evangelical Christians are saying, is that there's an aspect of this that's very, very not just paranormal, but also, well, evil and deceitful. And if you look at the UFO phenomena, it is very connected with things like the occult, as Dr. Faulkner says. We see a lot of connections there. People say that he doesn't seem to either agree with that or believe that. I'm not quite sure. He says that these are parts of the demonic view, and he doesn't seem to hold that view. But oftentimes, when people see UFOs or have these kind of experiences, they also have poltergeist experiences. They also have experiences of things like automatic writing, and there's other new agey occultic type stuff that go along with just the UFO. It's not normally just or not. It's oftentimes not just the UFO phenomena. There are all these other spiritual aspects about the phenomena that has to be explained. So if it were just aliens, or if it were just naturalistic, then why, when people see these UFOs, are all these other occultic things going on with them? Another reason I think that, so one reason I think the demonic view is good is because the other explanations tend to fail. I don't think that natural explanations can account for all of the sightings. He thinks that he says a little before the clip I played that all but 1 or 2% can be explained naturalistically. Then he went and said that he doesn't know of any case where there's something that can't be explained naturalistically or through hoax. But I don't think the alien view is weird enough, or it takes into account all this paranormal poltergeist type stuff. Um, I don't think the naturalistic explanation works either across the board. Now, I do think that the majority of UFO reports are explained naturalistically. There are some hoaxes. 95+%, 98%, a very high percentage of reports are merely misidentification, weather phenomena, or whatever, things that are naturalistically explained, but not all. Another reason that I think and other Christians think that what we're dealing with here with this kind of UFO alien phenomena, the reason we think is spiritual is because there is an overt aspect that the beings in question are not just anti-Christian, not just anti-religious, but they're anti-Christian. So they teach things, particularly that Jesus is not God, that Jesus is either another person, he's enlightened in some way, or he's another alien. Aliens rose him from the dead, took him at the ascension. And as several researchers have come to find out, in particular Joe Jordan of the Mutual UFO Network, read his book, Piercing the Cosmic Veil, or go to the website by that same name, piercingthecosmicveil.com. And he says that he has, I think, hundreds of reports, interviews, testimonies where people said they were undergoing some kind of an abduction experience. And then they called on the name of Jesus and the abduction stopped. So why would that be the case? Aliens, that wouldn't make any sense if they were simply aliens. Are all these to be explained naturalistically? Well, again, there are some natural explanations. Sleep paralysis could be, as someone pointed out in a few videos ago in the comments, is one possibility for some of the occurrences. Psychological issues. There are a number of ways to explain this naturalistically. But can naturalistic explanations really account for all of them? I don't think so. There are too many accounts from too many people across the board throughout time, even people that I know personally who have experienced UFO sightings that we just cannot really give a very good naturalistic explanation. When you couple those problems, the problems that we get with trying to explain them naturalistically or physically, with the spiritual aspect of it, this poltergeist phenomena, all that's attached to it a lot of times, the apparent immateriality of these things being able to pop in and out of existence, to be miles over there and miles over there, to fly at thousands of miles an hour and perform right angle turns or 180-degree turns. When we take all this together, along with what Valet says, Keel, Hynek, it doesn't really seem like these that every occurrence of a UFO or whatever you want to call it, UAP, and especially these more close encounters where you were starting to see beings, can be explained naturalistically. To say they've all been explained naturalistically, we have to that they're all either lying, they've all been hoaxed, or they're all having some kind of a psychological problem. And that just doesn't seem to be the case. People have been interviewed by psychologists and psychiatrists, and this person is completely sane, and the person really believes that he has gone through this experience. So I appreciate Answers in Genesis bringing this UFO question to the table. And I appreciate Dr. Faulkner giving presenting his own research and all that. And this is a fun topic. I thought I would share what they said and then give a little bit of a critique based on what little bit I know of the topic. So I hope that you enjoy this. Go check out Answers in Genesis, that video. I'll put a link to that video in the description. Please like and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. I do appreciate the comments I've been getting. And I've gotten a lot of comments from people saying that, yeah, I've had these experiences and they seem to be demonic in nature. They seem to be real. They don't seem to be explained from a prosaic, naturalistic kind of explanation. So thanks for the comments. Keep them coming, and thanks for listening.